a shocker of sorts in that Larry Holmes lost the lineal and IBF heavyweight championships to Michael Spinks, thus denying him, Dan Rafael, a 49th consecutive win to begin his career and matching Rocky Marciano to be 49-0 and as heavyweight champion of the world. Spinks beat him in the 49th fight back in 1985 by decision, a fight I still remember watching, an HBO fight back in the day because of all the buildup. I again say the kids can go YouTube it up. Again, the Gen Zers, the under 30-year-olds that all think that boxing, you laugh when I say this, began in 2006. Go back and watch this. The magnitude of this was massive. The heavyweight champion of the world. We didn't know who Mike Tyson was yet in the 80s. We barely knew who he was. The magnitude of this was enormous because boxing was so much more mainstream. And the fact that he was about to match Marciano and Michael Spinks moved up from light heavyweight to beat him was a front page, not just front page of the sports section, front page of these old things kids that they used to have called newspapers. It was on the front page. It was the feature cover story in Sports Illustrated, the lead story on ESPN, the biggest of big deals.
TJ,
back in 85.
Will I date myself when I tell you that as much as I have adjusted, obviously, to the use of the internet, having now spent the bulk of my boxing writing career on the internet as a writer, as opposed to when I used to work for USA Today, I actually still get two newspapers, hard, actual, physical papers.
You've mentioned that. Go ahead, elaborate again.
No, I get USA Today still as a habit and my old stomping grounds, and I get the Washington Post, which is now my hometown paper. And but I do subscribe to the New York Times, and I read that online. For whatever reason, I like reading the Post in the paper, and I read the New York Times online, and I read USA Today. A little bit of both.
I'm going to keep having fun. I'm going to keep having fun with the Gen Zers, with the young audience that hears this. He's talking about this thing that's printed out on paper, and they roll it up and they throw it in your driveway at 5:30 in the morning. It's called a newspaper. That's what used to be a big deal.
Since I'm a kid, I always loved newspapers. I mean, one of my greatest joys in life was having my first ever article published in the newspaper. I still
in the newspaper, in the print. It's now it's the internet.
Yeah.
But
old habits die hard.
All I'm saying is massive when this happened.
Oh yeah,
huge deal in the sports world and in the boxing world when this happened. When Spinks beat him.
So Spinks was a sizable underdog going into this fight. Larry Holmes was the dominating champion. He had been the WBC champ, and then he become the IBF champ. But he was the lineal, and he had made a zillion defenses. And like you mentioned, he was trying to match it's not a record per se, but it was a hallowed plateau, if you will, of what Marciano did to become 49-0 before he retired. And he got right there on the precipice of 48-0, and now he's fighting Michael Spinks. Now, Michael Spinks was a bad boy, not a heavyweight, but Olympic gold medalist, and was the devastating, dominating light heavyweight champion. And in fact, when he won this fight, a fight, by the way, where one of the official judges back in the day was the dear departed former unofficial HBO scorer, was Harold Letterman, was on this fight. And where Spinks, won a very close decision.
He was the actual judge.
He was the actual judge, not HBO. He was the actual judge.
Right.
But anyway, it was a very close fight. A lot of people thought that Larry eked it out, but Michael got the decision. But what the biggest thing about it was, the historical element of this fight was he became the first ever. Remember, boxing at this point, it's like over 100 years old. He's the first ever light heavyweight reigning champion to go in his next fight and move up to heavyweight and win the heavyweight title. Others had tried and failed. He did it. It was a big deal. You mentioned it was on HBO. They did it at a place in the outdoor stadium at a now long gone casino that they tore down many years ago, the Riviera Hotel and Casino, which did plenty of fights in the mid 80s. Some of the bigger fights, Don King promoted a lot of fights there. And the other revelation about this is, and it became a thing later because other fighters kind of went by this blueprint. Roy Jones did it when he moved up to fight John Ruiz in the heavyweight division. They hired the famed nutritionist Mackie Shilstone, who was known for what he would do is he would bring the fighter up above the limit. I remember I knew Mackie for a long time. He worked with Bernard Hopkins when Bernard moved up to fight Tarver, so I got to know him at the time of the Roy Jones fight and the Hopkins fight. Interviewed Mackie several times and have called on him for his his commentary at various times, not related to fights he was involved with. But he was the one that became pretty famous by working with Michael to get him in shape to become heavyweight, because it's a big difference to going from 175. Now you're fighting a guy that's, in the like low 220s or so. Um, and to do that. So, they had this was like part of you talk about front page news. There was tons of stuff about Mackey's, he's given, Spinks, 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, and how they're going to build him up and
Right.
then bring him back down a little bit. And, how much carbohydrates he's having and how much, water weight he has. I mean, it was very scientific the way they were going about all this. And, Michael became, looked the part, even though Larry was obviously bigger than him, and they had like a big sellout crowd, a big rating, and HBO. And in the end, Michael Spinks won a
The
tactical, kind of boring fight, to be quite
Yeah,
honest, but
but
won
the
the
big
title.
thing, the
Won the
big thing
title.
is it was a 15-round fight still, and he was fresh, carrying the extra weight, and he was better than Holmes down the stretch of the fight. I vividly remember that part because there was so much debate. Barry Tompkins, Larry Merchant were doing the fight. I'm trying to remember if Sugar Ray Leonard was on the call. I'll have to go back and rewatch. But there was great debate. Will Michael Spinks wear down now with the extra weight in the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th round? Did not happen, my friend. And for the
No, and
audience,
it got picked up. The Ring Magazine and many others picked it as the upset of the year. And then, of course, the famous thing after the fight was when Larry Holmes, in a moment that he probably later regretted. I think I've heard him say he regretted the comment, where he basically said, there was so much conversation about comparing him to Rocky Marciano, where he uttered the very famous line that Rocky couldn't carry my jockstrap. And a lot of people, particularly in white America, did not take very kindly to that particular comment. And it kind of haunted Larry for a long time after that. But you can't take anything away from Michael Spinks. He beat him that night. They had a rematch. He beat him again. And then obviously not that long after that, Spinks ended up getting absolutely destroyed by Mike Tyson, and Larry Holmes got destroyed by Mike Tyson as well. So this was the Mike Tyson Bowl.
I'm going to ask you something. You and I have never been over this. We did not rehearse this, but I'm just curious what your opinion is before we get out of here.
We don't rehearse anything.
I know, but I didn't go over this with you. It's not on the rundown. I didn't tip you off to this.
Okay.
I wonder, I have wondered before, and I wonder sitting here right now, if Larry Holmes wins that fight with Michael Spinks and is 49-0, would you have thought, do you believe he fights one more time against somebody, gets to 50-0, has his money, has nothing else to prove, and says that's it?
No.
Or do you think he would have soldiered on even at 50-0 and kept fighting?
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. If you ever met Larry Holmes, talked to Larry Holmes, heard him speak about it, know how much he liked to make money, there is absolutely 0% mind in my mind that he would have, perhaps gotten to 50. First, it wouldn't have been a rematch with Spinks.
Right. It would have been somebody.
It would have still been
somebody.
whoever it was. But no. I mean, look, after he lost the second fight to Spinks, that's when he came back after the long layoff and he fought Tyson. But had he beaten Spinks, I have no question he would have continued the fight, because that fight was in 1985. He would have theoretically gotten to 50-0 in, I guess it would have probably been 86, because the fight with Spinks,
right.
The second fight with Spinks was in early 86. So that would have taken that place. He'd have gotten to 50-0. And then that was, like I said, early 86. If you look at Larry's career, he fought all the way to 2002. Now, maybe he would have retired a little earlier, possibly, but there's no doubt in my mind he would have continued to fight.
I trust your opinion. I trust your insight, but I just wonder, it would have been a different circumstance.
I don't think it would have been. There would have been a big celebration.
Where you can walk around, where you can walk away having beat
he would
the
have
record
maybe taken a softer touch to celebrate, maybe, or something like that.
Right.
But he would have kept on fighting, no doubt about it. I mean, and even in his later days, he may not have won, but he got other chances to fight for the title. He fought Tyson, got beat. Later on, in like 95, he got a chance to fight once again for the WBC title. Put in a good performance, but didn't quite get the job done. Lost a close decision to Oliver McCall, and and continued to fight even after that. So no doubt in my mind he would have continued fighting after the Spinks fight had he won that number 49 and then 50.
I love the banter back and forth.